Welcome back to Drang nach Osten, the drive east. This is no longer Barbarossa, in which we are attempting to do a blitz to the east. We are in a long bush. And see, like here, what we need to do is evaluate some of these forces. Some are doing better than others, but I think we should shift some to the, well, let's start here and shift some to the south. Part of some of this is no fuel, or no supplies really. And part of that is all these forces here are eating up the supplies. What are the, yeah, I don't know. And yeah, I hear you looking for a street in Rome. I've been there, done that. You know, and it's not just in Rome, but definitely Rome. There's a lot of one-way streets or roads. And halfway down the block, they seem to change their name. And maps don't necessarily show that well. Oh, I know today you've got GPS and maps on, you know, they're displayed on your car with arrow directions, and it shows you right where you are. But in the olden days, before that, that's not how it worked. Trust me, I've been there in the olden days before GPS and tried to aggravate around Rome. Yes, I'm using that term specifically. Okay, no, what are you doing? You can come up to here. I don't know. Yes, you're waiting for fuel. How is our supplies looking? Hey, good. If you haven't already, yeah, hit that like button. Follow us on Twitch. Subscribe on YouTube. We lost none. They're losing some here. Oh, well, we want to send you. We're going to also send you to North Africa. We're going to send you down here, maybe. Try to get you out of here so we're no longer trying to supply you out of this port. We've lost the province of Tim. Well, Tim, it was good knowing you, but you've left us or we've left you. I really wish I got this, but I wish I could have held that. That would have been good. A supply point, keep the Soviets from being able to base submarines anywhere in the Black Sea. Okay, just wait for them to... Okay, buying... Oh, yeah, this is realistic. I know it just went away. But their buying schemes... Spain, which is not in the war, neutral, but it's in the Axis, is buying copper from Canada, which is at war, and in the Allies. Yeah, that's historically plausible. Uh-huh. Battle of the Finnish coast. Okay. Okay, yes, we'll activate the SS tank destroyer brigades. Right, okay, well, they've pushed into here. You know what we're going to do is we're going to push into there with that. And when these guys finish falling back, then we move up to there. So glad they're putting railways in Hoi 4, but wish they would have done it way back in Hoi 3. And then the supply problems. Oh, we still have supply problems, and we should have some supply problems, but not supply problems that we have. No, you just support the attack, not actually attack. Let's go back to this view here. Okay, you head that way. Okay, you guys are all up here. So you start falling back. Okay, these are just hills, so you attack there and you support that attack because you guys are in good shape. That could stabilize the front. They're falling back here. These guys will fall back and then come back into there. Put them in the... well, no, that was just activating them so we could build them. It wasn't actually giving us the units. This area, well, a lot of these areas are hard on supply right now. Okay. Alright, okay, naval strike. Tactics have advanced, very good. We'll let that continue, and now tactics have advanced. We've won there, Schwer, Gustav, no, we don't need those. Expand the air base, no need. Okay, well, you're coming up to the front line, you'll help. Air supply to there. Battle of Kursk is on. One up there. Good, we're pushing them out of there, that's nice. Holding there, they're attacking here, these units. You can support any attack there. Amphibious invasion tactics. We'll stop that. Yes, yes, we know you're probing. You're constantly probing and finding it's not that good of a place to attack. No. Need forces down here a bit more, I think. So they're pushing into here. Well, since they're taking us, let's push, fall back, however you want to say it there. Well, we've just lost Kursk. And I don't know that it's our allies' fault. Let's keep pushing you into there. Oh, Rommel got shattered again. Oh God. I know it was my fault, but whatever. Oh, we're going to change your tasking because of Rommel. Back to there. Okay, the Russian Guard Division, or Guards Division, yes. They can be. See, along here we're doing okay. Here they're pushing us hard and they're bombing us, but we may hold them out. It's right in here that we're having problems, partially because of fuel and also down in here. Fuel supplies, however you want to say it, that are not doing well. Okay, guys, time for an offensive here. And you support the attack. And one from over here will join the attack. So we're attacking from multiple provinces. Okay, we just had a mount division shattered. Where was it? Oh, Ringel finally shattered down here. Okay. Well, you did good for a long time there. You're falling into there, you're holding here. I shouldn't have, well, I don't know if I shouldn't have moved, but okay. We got the armor unit here. Now, still thinking what Niagara said about the guards divisions. They're tough. Well, I would say okay, there's a lot of tough Soviet units, shall we say, but they weren't well led or well equipped, and were often small because I've talked about how Soviet Union had big divisions. It goes through the officer purges at all levels, gets more and more strongly controlled by the commissars, and then there's the debacle of the Winter War against Finland. And so the Soviets come to the realization that for the size of the units that the officers command, they're just not capable of it. So, you know, it's a general is not capable of commanding a division, so instead of reducing him in rank or whatever, they just make divisions sort of like reinforced brigades, not a full division strength. So they downsize everything. Where I understand by the time they start using guards brigades, guards units, which is a bit later than this, I think. Again, look up all this because I'm not sure on it. And those units are better equipped. They are larger, maybe getting back to more normal size units, shall we say. And they have some of the better officers. So they are tougher than the average Soviet unit, yes. But I don't think they were particularly very good units. Where there are some really good German units that are operating, like Großdeutschland, like Feldherrenhalle, like the Panzerlehr. That should be, I think, is somewhere in here. Where is Panzerlehr? It was around here somewhere, you know. It has an L in it. No. There's Großdeutschland. Some of these units were just really good. Okay, so we finally won that. So let's counterattack. They're probably a bit too strong. So let's send you this way. Well, we're winning here. We're reducing this crap. Okay, well, charge. Don't give him a moment's peace. Well, they're counterattacking back here because we counterattacked and stopped. Oh, well, Finland. Okay. Okay, now I'm totally on board with this buying stuff. Finland, who's a member of the Axis and at war, is buying, but they may not be at war with Britain, but they're definitely at war with the Soviet Union. And they're buying copper from the United Kingdom. Ugh. Okay, I think you need to get out of the Caucasus. There's no reason for your units to be there. Hello, IP. Well, I would disagree with you at this point. What am I going to do? Fall back to how is, and we'll come to this, how is it better to try to hold down here in Iran You know, yeah, I get maybe you're saying I should just give up Iran, but then they're going to push into Iraq. And yeah, the desert here, and if we keep Saudi Arabia out of the war, the desert here we could probably hold. So we would lose all of this down here if we lost in the Caucasus. We may lose it anyways, and I may not hold the Caucasus. But you know, the Caucasus make a lot of sense. They get oil for Germany. They opened up a new front, disrupted a lot of things, but I was just woefully prepared, badly prepared for this war. So it's, you know, it wouldn't be the most terrible thing having them take all this territory down here, but yeah. How many tanks do you reckon the Soviets lost on that front? Down here in the Caucasus? Well, they've lost a lot of forces. Because like these guys here, they're getting ready to be attacked, it looks like. They're holding up all these tank brigades. There's a lot of units that are fighting very well here, actually. Holding off much larger forces. So, as a distraction, now should I have taken here? Yes, because I want this port, to deny the port to the submarines that I had here briefly. But should I give it up now? Well, I'm prepared to retreat into this swamp here, which we could probably hold if need be. Do you get oil from the... Hello, Suter. Yes, I do, but I don't need it. So I'm actually not shipping oil out of it here. I hope not to lose this here because we have a huge amount of oil stored up here, and we have a huge amount of oil stored up over here coming from some of these places. I've got historically too much oil, but what I don't have is a lot of fuel, which is what's limiting me. So yes, and that's and well, let's do this. Well, let's just make a save. Yeah, we're going to make a save here. Okay. And then we're going to try an experiment here. And I'll reload the save. Another long save, so it's good that we're doing this. Okay, I'll show you what would happen here. Let this long save happen. Now I'm doing this intentionally, just in case I started to run out of oil. Come on, save nicely. We're letting you go. And of course I'm denying the oil to the Soviets as well. As I've talked to Ari, I don't know what their stockpile is in the game. It may be huge, so they may not be feeling the loss of the oil yet. Okay, good. That's safe finally. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. We're going to create some convoys. We're going to create a resource convoy. We're going to come out of Batumi, and let's see, we're going to go to we want to go to Odessa, right? And we're going to create another one, and it's going to come out of here, Al-Hadriya or whatever. Okay, so let's come here, create another resource one. Now why are you down? Oh, it's only here. Now we're going to come into Paola. There we go. Okay, okay, so now we have 2 resource convoys. Not moving anything at the moment, but we're going to let a day or so go by. Okay, pause that. Nothing moving here? Okay, give it a little bit of time. I don't really care about it, because I'm going to go back and load the last save. I don't care what's happening now. It may take a little bit of time for these to start shipping supplies back. I think I should have enough ships. Okay. Nope. The Bantumi isn't running yet. No, that's not running here yet. Just give it. Oh, well, there it is. You can see here. Look at the oil coming out every day. 9999. It'll dry up. That metal. See all that energy there? It's way overdone, and this is what has been stockpiled up down here. So we have basically a full amount of oil per day. Now it'll and that's the most it can possibly move, and it'll go away very quickly. But you can't overfill these reservoirs here, and we can see all the fuel here that's been stored up from the crude oil, the metal, the energy. Here, so this is a bit of a I don't know if you call it a bug or a feature or something that's not so great, but oh, we don't want to be attacking with that unit. But yeah, so before I lost this, I should very much want to just evacuate all the supply or all the resources out to deny it to the Soviets. So let's come back. Let's quit. Yes, your screen's going to go black briefly. We'll be back very shortly with pictures, but I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, a bit overkill on the oil and some of the resources. It's a difficult thing to balance in a game like this, because there's nothing saying in a truly global grand strategy game like this that you can only have the resources that Nazi Germany actually had. Because starting in 1936, I've been buying oil by selling supplies, which in essence just represent manufactured goods. So that you would, represent selling toasters or whatever, or arms to other nations, earning money, using that money to stockpile oil. Like one of the documentaries I saw many years ago, France. Well, when Germany conquers France, they capture about a year's worth of oil for German operations. So they get that much oil. So there's that much oil stored in France, mostly in underground reserves in France that Germany gets. So a lot of nations did store up oil for possible wars. So Germany just didn't do a very good job of it. And should you be forced to make the same mistakes? I don't think so. But on the other hand, with this game, it allows you too much to overstock. So a better balance should be had. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's best to do for some of this stuff, because Germany, yeah, an unlimited supply of coal, basically. Yes, I know Germany was short on coal at different times during the period, but it was more of a transportation problem, meaning the trains were, say, bringing supplies out to the Eastern Front instead of moving coal from coal mines to, steel mills and power factories and whatever. It was more of a transportation problem. Steel, well, let me put it this way. Germany didn't have that big of a problem with steel. Germany had a problem with high quality steel. That's a different problem. And rare materials. Well, Hearts of Iron 4 does this better by breaking down different types of rare materials, because this is including things like rubber, as well as things like tungsten and chromium and whatever. So, yeah. Oil, well, 42, Germany has enough oil. 43, 44, no, Germany doesn't have enough oil. Okay, well. They're pushing into there. These guys are pushing into here. These guys will push to there. They're going to stop pushing there because that's going to become a problem. Finally killing off this swamp. Hello, Guido Keep. How you doing? Hi, gamer. In my campaign, I just surrounded Alexandria and don't worry, spawned around me. How do you know what conditions for this? Well, you can look in the mod. That will tell you. Now, I don't know, did they actually spawn? That very well could have happened. Or if you've surrounded Alexandria, maybe you got the British landed reinforcements. Because 30 divisions seems awfully big. Yeah, I don't know. There is, I know, a spawn set up for that. If you take certain provinces here, they will spawn some British units. So Alexandria and further inland as well. Yeah. So could not have landed. Yeah, I hear you. Now, okay, everybody, you have to realize something. Okay, a little bit of a history lesson. I think it was, and again, I want to label all this very clearly. This is historical commentary, not historical fact lesson here. I'm going to get things wrong. I'm going off of memory here. But in the 1880s, I believe, France secures the rights from the Khedive, I think he was called at the time, of Egypt, to build what becomes the Suez Canal. Now, this is going to be a difficult undertaking, though not as difficult as the Panama Canal that comes later, because you're worrying about sand here. where Panama, you're worried about jungles, but also digging through mountains. So Panama comes later, right around World War One. Well, and I don't know if at this time, in theory, Egypt is a part of the Ottoman Empire still. The Ottomans effectively control at this time around what I'm talking around is around the 1880s. Still, Cyrenaica, they're still controlling out here, but Egypt not so much. It may be sort of in name only, may not be. Again, I don't know. So, and this is all getting to a point, but I'm starting sort of at the beginning of this story. And the whole endeavor goes bankrupt. It was a French operation, or it was done by a Frenchman, shall we say. Now, Britain really, really, really wants a canal through here. So they sort of buy up the rights to it, and I don't know whether they manufacture a war with Egypt or Egypt just doesn't really want Britain to, in essence, control the Suez Canal. But there's, in essence, a war. Britain wins pretty easily. There's some hard-fought battles, but Britain wins. But Egypt does not become an English colony. It becomes basically a puppet state. And it is officially now independent from the Ottoman. It is an internationally recognized nation, but it is a puppet state. Now, they jointly eventually go in for a colony situation in Sudan, because it's called Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, in that it is both the English and the Egyptians pushing into Sudan together. And you get the whole Khartoum thing going on with Chinese Gordon. Chinese Gordon is an Englishman. He just led mercenary forces in China very effectively. Though just in the early stages of that sort of campaign, I think it's James Warden Townsend, an American, takes over from him after he leaves, and actually does a lot of the better. He leads the Ever Victorious Army, I believe it's called in China. I know I'm jumping all over the history here, and I remember a few years ago talking to, I think he was a Sudanese educator of some sort. I don't know if you want to call him a professor or whatever. And, and I wasn't, well, look at what happened to, we were talking about Sudan or whatever. The British in Khartoum, did the Sudanese beat them? Yeah, they did. And, when Chinese Gordon gets killed, because it was the Mahdi who was, rising up and going to liberate Islam from oppression, not just of non-Muslims, but of the unrighteous Muslims. There was, I think it was 8. I think, count them, 8 Englishmen, including Chinese Gordon, in Khartoum at the time. But it was definitely less than 20 of them. Most of the garrison was Sudanese, and the main sort of, shall we say, relatively well-trained in modern warfare equipment were Egyptian soldiers. So, yeah, and Chinese Gordon was sent in there to evacuate Khartoum, but because he was a religious fanatic, I think would be a good term. And he was also vehemently opposed to slavery, which the Muslims then and still do, but back then a big time, still perpetrated, still slave owning and slave trading. And he was trying to hold out, but trying to shame the British Empire, the British government, whatever you want to call it, into coming to his relief, which they tried to, but they don't save him. And then about 10 years later, they come in and fight the Battle of Omdurman, which is on this side of the river here. They have, I don't know, I mean, this is obviously a big province here, but in which a huge British square just meaning in defensive battle, just murders a bunch of the Mahdi's troops, and they just get slaughtered and get revenge for it about 10 years later. Takes them that long, but yeah. So there's this Egyptian puppet state. The King Farouk. I'm not sure if he's around during this time, 1942, or if he comes around post-war, but I think it's during the war or interwar era. And this government is a puppet government of the British, but it's actually puppet government. It isn't a protectorate where Palestine and Jordan were protectorates, not colonies, meaning they're League of Nations mandate, protectorate mandates, which is different than a direct rule colony. Like, I don't know, Kenya was a colony at this time. So, but this was a puppet state situation. Now, I'm sort of getting to the spring up of units, and it's probably a bunch of British units that Guido got, but there is historical precedent for it, and I'm getting there to this. The British, to some degree, got to do what they wanted to do in Egypt, but the Egyptian government, the elements that are governing Egyptians are run by Egyptians, are set up by Egyptians. It's just sort of, the British really don't care. I mean, there's, the archaeologists that want to dig up tombs and study the ancient Egyptians, and the Egyptians don't really mind it. They don't really care that much. They're Muslims. They're sort of kind of proud, but they're sort of kind of not, but, sort of back and forth. And so obviously they get to haul away, any sort of, artifacts they find. They do sort of have to pay, get license from the local Egyptians, but the Egyptians know that they've got to give out the licenses or the British will get mad. The big thing is Britain wants stability. I mean, that's the big thing. They want stability and, of course, access through the Suez Canal. Beyond that, they don't really care. Quite honestly, they really don't care. So, in World War I, this becomes a sort of a stalemate front until T.E. Lawrence, later known as Lawrence of Arabia, does his whole thing, takes Aqaba here. Watch the movie, I know. Niagara has, probably most of you haven't. Great movie, Lawrence of Arabia. Generally good history. There's some more minor details that are wrong, but generally good history. So not until they take Aqaba do they start to turn the flank, and then the British push out across the Sinai in a big way. Okay, that gets us to World War I. Peace is back on. Farouk comes around at some point at this time. I think it was more, and I'm going to give it an anecdote here that I recently heard about him. And I think it was mainly happening post-war, but, I don't know. In the 50s, in the 1950s. He liked to drive around, I think it was Alexandria, but maybe it was Cairo or maybe just anywhere. Liked to drive around in his, fancy cars and shoot the tires out of other random cars. He wasn't shooting at the passengers. He was driving around and shooting out the window of his car. Now, I don't know if he was actually driving and shooting or if he was just riding in the back and shooting at the tires of the car around him. And so, now they actually, when he was doing this, they had an ambulance following his car to deal with any crashes and, injuries of the people that, were either got hit by the out of control car or car swerving because of it, or, a car crash. So this was the government doing this stuff. So they knew he was a bit of a nutter, and he was going around and randomly shooting car tires and probably people and other things accidentally, maybe on purpose, but I don't know. So he's a bit of a nutter. Now, there's a rising group of Egyptian officers. Well, there's an Egyptian army, and it's probably, I'm just going to throw this out here, probably about 100,000 man plus strong army at this time, 1942. It's fairly large. It is equipped almost exclusively with World War I equipment, and I mean that literally, not just World War I style equipment, but actually World War I equipment. Their artillery is World War I. They're using World War I era Enfield rifles. Now, that doesn't mean that all the equipment is like used up or junk, in that there's a lot of rifles and artillery pieces made during World War I that either never make it to the front or just aren't overly used up. So it's not that it's bad equipment, it's just not modern equipment. And I don't know that they have a lot of machine guns, but probably a fair number. And so it's a moderately well-equipped army. It fights one engagement and one engagement only, and it's out here. Where is Ruth? Because this is the Great Depression out here. Where is the Siwa? Okay, here's Siwa. Yeah, it was sort of out near the Siwa oasis, I believe. That was sort of a base down here. So the whole army is stationed all around here. They fight a brief engagement, the Egyptian army, and it is a defensive battle from some probing attack from, I don't know if it was Germans or Italians or a combination. But they fight okay. But that's it. To the best of my knowledge, they're never officially at war with the Italians or the Germans. In fact, there is a clique of officers within the forces that are sort of like not so much hoping for an Italian victory, because they know from Mussolini's statements that Mussolini was trying to revive the Roman Empire, and Mussolini is just going to switch it over from British control to Italian control. And unlike the British, who, like I say, are letting the Egyptians govern themselves through the king because it's sort of easier with the Egyptian or with the British to do so, and so long as it's stable, they're relatively happy. The British are, that is. And that's what Britain is concerned about. They don't want to have conflict, upset, revolution, revolt, riots, whatever you want to call them. They just want stability. And that beyond that, they don't really care. It's not a big problem. There's millions of people living, in the Greater Nile Valley area here. It's huge. They're not trying to make money out of it, but they also don't want to have the cost them money to garrison it. They're just concerned about the Suez Canal and trade coming through, not, sure, to Egypt directly, that's fine, but really mainly India and other parts east into Britain particularly, but generally, the Mediterranean and world. They want trade and stability there. That is critical for Britain. And they would like that controlled. Now, these group of officers don't like their monarchy, don't like the British in charge. They definitely don't want the Italians in charge. But they sort of kind of think that if the Germans win, The Germans aren't interested in Egypt, and if Egypt was going to become a bit of a loyal puppet, well, not a puppet, maybe say, a regional ally, maybe we'll turn it over to something of a regional ally, they wouldn't be German or Italian occupied like they're British occupied. Just sort of like, hey, yeah, we'll keep the canal basically open. Presumably, they'll collect the transit fees to fund the Egyptian Navy, but not try to hike it up too much, at least not on anything German coming through there. Now, so this army, now this clique, some of the leading members of the clique are Gamal Nasser and Anwar Sadat. Two names maybe some of you have heard of, I don't know, if you know your history. But these officers are not loyal to Britain. So they're actually thinking about planning a coup. Now, they don't actually do it at this time, but they're thinking about it. And so the Egyptian army is pretty damn large, but like I say, it does not want to fight in World War II. Would it have? Well, it did when it got attacked in Siwa. There were definitely also, for probably various reasons, and I'm sure there were some people for one reason or another were loyal to the monarchy. There were Anglophiles, people who like British rule. And then there were also, I'm sure, people that looked around and, yeah, being ruled by the English is going to be a hell of a lot better than being ruled by the Italians. And although the Germans don't care about this place, Italy does. And so if the Italians win, we're not going to have a king. Or if we do, he's going to be even more of a puppet. And we're going to have Mussolini doing his parades and reforming Egypt as part of the British Empire, or the new Roman Empire. And to tell you the truth, it would have been quite easy for Italy to do so, because unlike the British, I bet the Italians would have used the Coptic Egyptian Christians as their sort of puppet troops, as their sort of puppet bureaucrats. They're an oppressed, still to this day, an oppressed Christian minority in Egypt. And so they have no real position then or now in governing of Egypt. The British, because again, they don't care. So, well, if the Muslims will run the place, fine, well, that's good. But since the Egyptians want to integrate it into, not the Egyptians, the Italians want to integrate Egypt into their empire, and they have a spotty track record on trying to do that with the Muslims. It's not all bad, but it's not all good either. I think they, the millions of Christians here, I think they would have used that as their sort of, internal security force elements, give them the guns, as it were. And so there's a lot of the, Royal Army, the Egyptian Royal Army types, that it may be not good under the British, but it's going to be worse under anybody else. So yeah, we're going to fight if it comes down to, our population centers of Alexandria, Cairo, the whole Nile Delta, where most of the people live. But being, hey, we're equipped with World War I equipment, which also means we're basically not very motorized, if hardly at all. I know some of the photos I have of them, fairly large, 100+ millimeter artillery being drawn by horses. So that may be normal procedures. That ain't going to go very well, in the Western Desert. So there's not really a good reason for the Egyptian army to try to field forces fighting the Italians out in the desert, guarding the the Siwa city, if you will. There is a sort of a city out there, in that sort of region. Yeah, that makes a bit of sense, but beyond that, they're not interested in fighting unless it gets, I think, to their thing. So the spam of units is somewhat historical, representing the Egyptian army. When you start out with Black Ice, it actually has Egypt as a puppet state. There is an event. I don't know if it fires for the human player, but it definitely fires for the AI that turns Egypt into a British possession colony, and that's done because if it stays part of if it stays its own puppet, Britain will not garrison it well, and so the Italians will just walk through it, even if they go to war, and by the time the British send forces, it'll be too late. So you sort of, for gameplay with the AI, you need to do that, but otherwise it should be sort of a puppet state, not a direct colonial possession. So that's sort of the story of Egypt in World War II. And then, of course, the officer clique eventually revolts and gets rid of the king and whatnot. And so, yes, Nasser becomes leader of Egypt until he's assassinated, I believe. And then, of course, Sadat becomes leader, and he then makes peace with Israel, and then he's assassinated. Yeah, there's basically sort of been military rule in Egypt since that point. We currently have Sisi as basically a general. Sisi, the general, is the current leader of Egypt. And either you're going to... And I know America, they want democracy. They want voting for people because people want voting. And the sort of middle class, they wanted voting in America, help them up, and they got voting. And then the people voted in radical Islamicists. And they starting down a very dark path. And then the military did a coup. And the middle class are sort of like, in Egypt now, yeah, the military leadership ain't that bad. It's corrupt. Maybe not as corrupt as what starts with an M, the previous guy. But it's corrupt, and it's still better than the radical Islamists that will win, because there are a lot of people in Egypt, and a lot of them are rural, and a lot of them are only semi-literate. And so when you have the holy man running and then you have the secular guy running, they vote for the holy man. So putting it back into the army's control, that's mostly been moderate, definitely under Nasser was a pan-Arabist, and trying to go with a semi-socialist platform to appease his Soviet overlords. But Sadat put it back into sort of a centrist, moderate military dictatorship, and that's probably the best for Egypt. Okay, but the units that respond, you see in 1942 Africa campaign, my problem is that it's October 39 in my game. Okay, well, one, you've sort of broken the game to some degree. I don't know if you're playing as Italy and you've pushed in 39. Yeah, I don't know. Here's another problem with this game here. Supply. Now, we're seeing reasonable amount of troops down here that are messing back and forth. What you'll find is, even with the humans, or AIs, you'll be able to stack a huge number of divisions and move them through here that could never have done historically, because neither side could supply the number of divisions. And that's, like I was talking about with the Egyptian army being horse-drawn. almost exclusively. Well, I'm not saying there aren't dispatch motorcyclists and there aren't, a few trucks here and there, but those are like, hey, yeah, we've got a division and there's the 4 trucks for the division and that's it. And they're 1920 something models of trucks. So, yeah, they have a few trucks. So everything else is wagons and guys marching around. But even if it was somewhat motorized, the supply element, maybe it's still, marching infantry, but the supply element motorized, eventually, Britain builds a railway and builds a pipeline to be able to supply water and whatnot to these forces here. And Germany doesn't because it can't. I mean, Italy can't. It just doesn't have the infrastructure set up to do so. If you stick with the historical levels of forces, that would be fine. But the AI will get too big of forces. Or the humans will send in, too many divisions that would not be historically done. So Black Ice tries to do some sort of balancing out with it. So you need to go in heavy and hard. Now, what I do is normally do German invasions. Well, sometimes back here, because I'll island hop and take out Cyprus and then try to invade down here. But sometimes you can invade from Crete, take the Suez Canal. So when the things pop up, you have multiple ports and a lot of forces, and you just come in and crush before they get too organized. Well, I think we're going to end the episode here. Thank you, Guido, for good questions and points. Allowed me to talk a little history of Egypt and the situation going on at this time and why it was the way it was. There's always reasons for these things historically and why it happens to this day. And it's fascinating to me. And everything. So thank you, everyone. We'll be continuing this again if there is enough views for stalemate on the Eastern Front, basically. And we're waiting for what's going to happen with Torch, defeat Torch, and then maybe we can free up some of these units to fight on the Eastern Front. So see you next time for more, yes, even more hearts.